Perfect. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Are you in Calgary right now?
I am in Calgary.
All right. Is it what time? Is it 5 o'clock there?
Yeah, 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. All right. How have you been? Have you been busy lately? Have you been doing a lot of shows?
Yeah, actually, it's been slow to start the year with shows, which is unusual, but it's good because we're working on a bunch of new music,
Mhm.
and it's giving me a time to focus on all the creative side of things while we're getting prepped for the year. We got a ton of shows this summer, and it's a good little break to get everything together.
Awesome. Well, normally I like to start like all the way back to the beginning of like someone's childhood, but I figured let's just do the opposite and kind of start in the present, which is of course your latest song, "She's My Religion," which you dropped February 9th. Can you first talk about, I guess, what was the inspiration behind that song?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things. I'm very fortunate to have a great partner in life, and one of those things where I feel like you can get down on yourself, you can get down on what's happening in the world, but if you know that there's that one person that's always there that you can always believe in, that always believes in you, you've always got that solid foundation to kind of fall back on, and not even fall back on, but just to lean on when you get down. No matter what, you can always turn to that person. They're going to be there for you.
And I assume that person is Mariah, right? Mariah Stokes. By the way, just so I can like be clear, is it girlfriend, fiance, wife?
Girlfriend.
Girlfriend. Okay. What's cool about that is she's also a singer. She's a performer. So I wonder, because she's a singer and also you kind of sing with her, and I believe she's harmonized with you. And have you also performed on her songs as well?
I haven't performed on any of her songs, but she's got a brand new single coming out this Friday, and I was a co-writer on it. So we do collaborate together and write tunes together as well.
Okay, cool. I'm curious. Does that create any challenges for you, be both kind of working together, or I don't know what the opposite of a challenge, or is that an advantage in any way?
I think it's an advantage because we both understand what we're going through in terms of this wild career path that we've chosen. And I know that, in previous relationships, probably for both of us, it's hard to explain to people that you're going to be working late hours, you're going to be home, and then you're going to be gone. Most of your weekends are going to be taken up. I feel like because we both have such a good understanding of what is involved in this career choice and what we've decided to do, it actually makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, no, you're right. That makes sense because again, some people probably wouldn't understand. And for instance, if someone works a 9 to 5 and then you're getting home at like 2 or 3 a.m., it's a little different, right? So yeah, I get that. So She's My Religion. Again, it's only been out February 9th. What are we? Just under 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So obviously pushing that, and hopefully that does well. Has it been picked up by any radio stations?
We just found out today we got added to one of the Great Lakes stations out in Ontario. I don't have my notes in front of me, which is horrible. I should know exactly what station it is, and I should be able to tell you that.
It's all good.
It's CHAW, I think it was, out in Great Lakes that added it today. So that's one of our first ads at radio. So we're thankful for that. We had a lot of good support from Amazon right out of the gate, adding us to a bunch of playlists. So we're, again, thankful for all the support and all the little wins that we can get.
Awesome. Yeah. So obviously we'll keep pushing that. And then if we go a little further back, you had Good Things, which I want to say was that an EP?
Yeah, we'll say it was an EP. It was it was an introduction to the Good Things story. I think it was an introduction to everything that I'm doing, and it was 4 songs done 2 ways. So it was fully produced version and then a live acoustic version.
Right.
And so yeah, it was kind of like an introduction to that, kind of give a taste of how the songs were written versus how we wanted to present them in a fully produced band version.
Right. And I guess just to chat just a bit about the songs. So first song being the name of the album or EP, which is Good Things. And I believe you mentioned in the past about how it kind of talks about how good things, take time and you have to be patient with things, which I think a lot of people are learning, especially from COVID and just everything else, especially I think as an artist and someone who's trying to make it in this world, because there's so many talented people out there. Can you just maybe talk about maybe your experience or your experience with kind of being patient, or what taught you to be patient or something like that?
I think being patient is something I'm continually learning. I'm still learning how to be patient. It's one of those things you always want you always want to keep working and get to the next thing and move forward and keep surpassing the goals that you've set. And I think that I didn't even realize at the time, but writing that song was a constant reminder for me that I will use the rest of my life, that it's okay for things to take time. It's okay to enjoy the moment and kind of celebrate the wins that you have along the way, and to not get too ahead of yourself trying to get on to the next thing, but to appreciate what you have in the moment. And I grew up watching my dad build custom motorcycles, which is quite an undertaking, building the whole frame and designing them. And it's something that doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of thought and a lot of dedication to figure out how to execute something properly. And it was kind of instilled from me from a young age that you can do anything you want, but it's going to take time. It's going to take dedication. It's going to take perseverance. So you got to remember those things when you're facing challenges.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of challenges, and you talked about your dad, and you talked about it in other interviews, how he had a very serious health issue scare, and you did mention how because of that, I don't know if it was the EP that was put on hold or just the song "Good Things" that was put on hold. Maybe can you just briefly talk about that whole experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it's the 20th now, but the 18th, just 2 days ago, was the 4-year anniversary of the liver transplant that we did. So I donated 80% of my left lobe of my liver to my dad. He unfortunately was diagnosed with liver cancer back in 2019 and in 2020. Due to a series of fortunate events, we were able to complete a live liver donation transplant, and he is healthy, 4 years in, cancer-free, 100% good. But when I got the phone call from the transplant hospital and from the people who were going to do the procedure to find out if I was even eligible to be a donor, we were actually in the middle of writing the song Good Things. So it was right in that moment while we were writing Good Things that I got this phone call being like, hey, can you come in and you can do your mock-up to see if you're an eligible candidate? Because at that point, we didn't even know if I was going to be eligible to donate my liver based on size and anatomy and a whole bunch of other things like that. And so I got that phone call in the middle of writing Good Things with Ali and Manning Rothrock. I was down in Nashville, and I got out of the write. We finished the song, finished the write. I got out and basically changed my flights, booked a flight home, came back instantly, went into the hospital for 3 days, did all the testing and MRIs and CAT scans and whatever. And they realized that I would be a match. And just 5 days later, we ended up having the transplant. So it was good things take time, and we had to wait forever for it to happen. And then it all happened just like that.
Yeah, no, an incredible story. And I know there's more, you've gone into further detail but you've explained it really well here. Did you consider changing either that song or the EP at all after everything that transpired?
No, I think that actually kind of solidified it, that was what it was supposed to be. It's like, good things take time. There's a reason for everything. Don't take shortcuts. Take your time. Like, make sure you do everything right. And I think that just kind of solidified the whole story of what that EP was going to be.
Okay, awesome. The other song I do want to focus on, which is, I want to say it's my favorite. I don't know why. I love the sound. It's Country Cliche. And one line I want to break up, because I love the line where it's like, because we're a blue collar, beer drinking, tailgating, hell raising, certified country cliche. And I find it ironic that you came up with that song, because I know you particularly, you're not the cliche country artist. You said you grew up with like hair metal and 80s stuff from your mom, your dad. But then there's this song, which is, if you want to say it's a cliche country song. Was there a reason why you made that song? Was it I don't want to say you were like poking fun or anything, or what was the reason behind Country Cliche?
Well, like, I grew up in a small town doing all of those ridiculous things. And I didn't grow up in the country, but I grew up in a small town where we spend a lot of time in the country. We spend a lot of time at rodeos and river parties and literally driving around doing nothing, just doing loser laps around town. And it was it is what happens in a small town and in the country, but it was kind of like making fun of what we did growing up to a certain extent. As much as it is legitimately what happened, it's like, it sounds ridiculous, but that's what we did growing up, and it kind of just makes fun of it.
No, and I appreciate that you can do that, and it's like, you hope that people don't get upset at you, because like, you're telling the truth at the end of the day, right? So,
and I mean, as much as it's making fun of it, we sure had a blast doing it when we did it.
Exactly. So it doesn't. At the end of the day, it's a good thing, really. Yeah, no, I really liked the country cliche, and then you had Back Pocket and Want Me as well on that EP. The one thing actually that stuck out again for Want Me is because one of the song or lyrics is because you only want me when you need me, and that to me really rang true because I think in so many experiences, a lot of people only again are needed or wanted when people need something from them, right? Is that something you've experienced a lot yet, do you think, or do you think you'll experience it more later on as you continue to grow and succeed? Because again, I think when you do get bigger, people tend to kind of reach out to you more and say, hey, remember me,
Yeah, totally. I think that I've been really fortunate. There's a lot of great people that I've surrounded myself with, and I've been very fortunate to not run into a lot of people who are not great people. So I haven't necessarily experienced that a lot from the music side of things, but in past relationships, I've definitely experienced that, and that's what inspired the whole song. Is just kind of feeling like you're in a one-sided relationship and you're just giving, and it's not an equal thing where you're back and forth.
Yeah. Speaking of people that you worked with, I was really happy to see that you've worked with some artists that I've actually had the pleasure of interviewing. So Annika, I know you've worked with Dan Davidson, Brett Kissel. I love the camaraderie in the Canadian music scene, no matter what genres, but especially country. Everyone seems to know each other or works with each other. Can you just briefly talk about how you kind of met, or who, out of those three, let's say like Annika, Brett, and Dan, how did you meet all them? Who did you meet first?
I met Annika first. I would have met Annika back in like 2014, actually. So quite a while ago. And it started out, she was a mentor as a part of a band she was in called Leaving Thomas, as a part of the Calgary Stampede talent search that I did back when I was like 16 or 17. And so she came in, was a mentor for that. And we got chatting some more. Leaving Thomas started kind of doing some things and taking off. And some friends that I was with started writing with them. We ended up writing a bunch together and used to go on these little writing retreats. So we'd write for a weekend and write a whole bunch of tunes. And that's kind of how my relationship with Annika started and developed. And she's now married to one of my producers, Spencer Cheen, who is also plays drums for Brett Kissel. So again, like another thing, it's intertwined. We all work together, we write together, play shows together. And so I'm very fortunate to have Annika and Spencer in my life as a part of everything we're doing, and still writing tunes together with them. And of course, Spencer's very heavily involved in the production side of things and mixing and all the records we work on. And Brett was not too long after that. I met Brett for the first time in probably 2015. And this was right when my other co-producer, Justin Cutting, had just started playing bass for him. And they were touring around, and I had the opportunity to meet Brett and kind of be introduced to his camp and all the people that were involved with what he was doing, and have slowly just kind of built that relationship and got to know each other a bit better over the years. And at the end of last year, I was fortunate to join him up in Bonnyville for his kind of year-end hometown show and open up the night for him. And same with Dan. My drummer, Greg Williamson, has been playing with Dan for 25 years, since they were back in the rock days. And again, it's just kind of one of those things that everyone works together, writes together. Dan and I write together, and then he asked me to come out on this 1980 something tour and open a couple shows for him at the end of last year as well. And it's like you said, there's a big camaraderie thing to it where everyone works together, we write together, and it's awesome.
Oh yeah, I love that. And through that, like, I've learned so many like fun little like tidbits of like Canadian music history, like going way back, like, decades ago. So I really appreciate that. Talking about actually kind of going back in Canadian history, I want to know about your experience at the Warehouse Studio. And you could tell me, of course, who did you meet at the Warehouse Studio?
Well, it's owned by a guy named Brian Adams, which maybe you've heard of him. He's done a couple things around the world for a few decades. Anyways, we were out there as a part of a program called Top of the Country, put on by SiriusXM and the Canadian Country Music Association. They choose 8 artists every year and basically have 2 recording sessions, either Toronto or Vancouver. You get to take out your band, your producers, and you get to record a song, film a video, and then they put all these songs head to head for a voting competition for the fans to vote, and then they pick a top 3 from there. So we were chosen to be one of the semifinalists in 2022, and that was right around the time my record was coming out as well. So it was a whirlwind of things happening, and so we flew out the band, flew my producers out, and got to record at the Warehouse, which was just a phenomenal experience. It's such a vibe in that place. And I remember walking out into the kitchen, and I heard guitars being played upstairs. So I'd asked Nicole from SiriusXM, who was there. I said, "Oh, is someone else recording upstairs?" And she was like, "Oh, that's just Brian playing guitar." And I was like, "Oh, just Brian playing guitar? Like Bryan Adams is actually here? What?" And so we finished the recording session, walked back out of the studio into the kitchen again. And I remember looking up the stairs because I hear this noise coming around the stairs, and I look up and there's like a shining light, and there's Bryan Adams walking down the stairs towards me. And it's like, he walks up and he's like, "Hey, I'm Brian," sticks his hand out as if I didn't know who he was. And it's like, "Hey, how's it going? I'm Devin." And he was like, "You're part of SiriusXM's Top of the Country that's here, right?" I was like, "Yep." And then he was just like, "How's everything going? Is it good?" "Oh, it's fantastic. Like literally no complaints. We're in a world-class studio. I'm standing here talking to Bryan Adams, and I have all my favorite people in the world with me making music. Literally doesn't get better than that." And so he says, "Are you going to be here for a little bit?" And we were actually just on our way out, but I was like, "Oh yeah, we're going to be here for a little bit," because I had no idea what was coming, and I just said that. And he said, "Well, I'm going to go across the street. I'm going to get a coffee, and then I'll come back. I'd love to give you guys a tour of the studio and show you around." So he comes back from his coffee, and we went upstairs into his private studio that he has, and he showed us all the stuff he was working on. And he looks over at me and goes, "Hey, you're a guitar player, right?" I go, "Yep." And he picks up a guitar and hands it to me. And it was a old 50s Martin. I now know it's a 1955 Martin D18. And I was like, "Oh, beautiful." So I'm strumming it. And he goes, "Yeah, that guitar, that was Johnny Cash's." I'm just like, "What? Like, how does that even happen?" I'm just, like, how does it get better than it's already, like, how does it just keep getting better? And so I played the like intro lick to Folsom Prison Blues on it because I had to. And then very gently handed it back to him. And
very gently, yeah. No, like you said, just a ridiculous experience. And I appreciate the fact that he was so humble that he was just like, "Yeah, my name is Brian." Like, you know.
Yeah.
That's no, I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. But I also want to talk about, again, like being a part of these different projects and these programs, because I know you've been a part of a few of them, and I've actually had the opportunity to MC an event for CMI, for Canada's Music Incubator, a few months ago. It was great, and I love what they do because I'm all about promoting Canadian talent, and that's what their mission is, really, right? I don't know much about Project Wild, but can you talk about, is there a big difference between Project Wild and CMI, or are they kind of similar?
They are similar to a certain extent. Project Wild is a longer version of CMI. CMI is very jam-packed. The wealth of knowledge that you learn in that program in the 5 or 8 weeks that you're in there is just out of this world. And Project Wild kind of pulls from a few different things that CMI teaches. They don't obviously teach you everything that CMI teaches, because CMI is 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, nonstop learning for 5 weeks. And Project Wild is split up into over 6 months with a few different seminars, with a few different industry mentors. And then you are basically left with a series of challenges that you have to complete as an artist, which is supporting a charity somehow, creating a merch item. Now I'm trying to remember what they are. There's 4 challenges you have to complete, basically, as a part of Project Wild, and then put together a final report, because at the end of it, they award 3 people with prize money, $100,000, $75,000, and $50,000. And so you have to create basically a business plan for the following 18 months of what you will do with that money if you're to win the 100,000. And then you also have to create a business plan of, if you don't win anything, what are you going to do over the next 18 months, and how are you going to continue to move your career forward?
I appreciate how they also set you up for that, where they're like, if you don't win, like, you need a backup plan.
Yeah.
And I guess unfortunately, well, yeah, you didn't win, right? And you also mentioned, I believe, like, you know, there's a lot of people always focus on wanting to be super successful, which of course everyone wants to be, but at the end of the day, not everyone is. However, there's still a lot of artists out there that can be well off enough and comfortable without being like these superstars, right? So I guess those programs maybe teach you that a bit, where it's like you can be like this, like, I don't want to say mid-level, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The typical thing that everyone thinks is either you're rich and famous, have millions of dollars, or you're so broke you have to eat Ichiban every day. And I mean, I love Ichiban, but I don't have to eat it every day. But they don't really talk about that mid level where it's like there's a lot of just like working class musicians that are doing phenomenal, producers and musicians and artists and songwriters that are contributing to a ton of things in the world, but they're not necessarily the mega superstars, but they're not broken, starving basically. And yeah, CMI for sure definitely sets you up for success in that aspect, to figure out how to create a sustainable business and how you can take the art that you're making and monetize it in a way that you can run a business and survive off of it. And I remember about 6 months after I finished the CMI program, based on the knowledge that I learned and how to run everything, I was actually able to quit my full-time job, and I've been full-time since then. And I contribute 99% of that to CMI and the program that I went through and everything that they taught me.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. I've noticed with everyone I've talked to, I'm a firm believer in karma, and then there's some coincidences that happen. I bring that up because I want to talk about, I believe it was like, there was 2 instances you mentioned about. One, like what made you get into country music was a friend of yours brought you to the show, and the artists that were there were Kip Moore and the Cadillac 3. And I say the Cadillac 3, and then the coincidence to me, or maybe it's karma, I don't know, is then I also noticed on your Instagram, you're promoting Cadillac all the time. What, am I crazy? Like, is that just a coincidence? Like, what happened?
It is wild. There's a whole bunch of things that have happened there are wild coincidences, or, you know, continuing to show up. You keep showing up at the right place at the right time. And the Cadillac 3 and Kip Moore were really the first 2 bands, artists that really flipped the switch for me of like, oh, that's what I want to do. Like I see that, like that's something that can be done. How do I do that? And I've always been a Cadillac fan. My whole life growing up, my dad building bikes and cars, and we're big General Motors, Chevrolet fans in our family. And Cadillac is the epitome of Chevrolet and General Motors and all of that stuff. It's the highest class version of everything that General Motors makes. And for I don't know how long I can remember, from the time I was a kid, my dream vehicle to just be like my daily driver to always drive was Cadillac Escalade, or any type of Cadillac, to be honest. And so then when I was actually in Project Wild, I had started building a relationship with the Cadillac dealership here in town, Carter Cadillac, and they had sponsored a few shows I'd been a part of over the last couple of years. And I approached them with this whole plan and idea that I had, in order to get myself into a Carter Cadillac, so that I didn't have to worry about driving to shows and if my vehicle is going to break down and all these kind of things. And presented this whole plan to them, and they were like, "We're on board. Let's do it." And it's been phenomenal since. It's really cool.
I love that.
On the other side of that, I've actually got to know one of the guys from the Cadillac 3 as well over the past few years, Kelby, the steel player, which has been kind of a wild full circle moment as well, from seeing them play and being like, that's what I want to do, to getting to be friends with the guys.
I would hope, like, if I'm playing in the Cadillac 3, that they would be sponsored by Cadillac. That would like make perfect sense.
It would be. I actually don't know if they are, but they should be.
They should be, yeah. And I don't know if this was another experience, but you do mention in another interview, I don't know if this was why you got into music or part of the reason, but I know you mentioned how your mom was a nurse. And or is she still a nurse?
Still a nurse, yeah, you bet.
Still a nurse, amazing. And she dealt. Was it just with people with like dementia or Alzheimer's, or?
She works in a continuing care facility, so it's a lot of people in their later stages of life, and they also have a locked unit, which is for the dementia patients and patients who need a little bit more help, and folks who need a little bit more help than those just kind of in their later stages of life. So Grew up around that. Started volunteering at her work when I was 7 years old, and also grew up. My great grandpa had Alzheimer's, as well as a few other family members as well. So I was aware of what it was. It wasn't necessarily a scary thing to me, like it is quite frightening to a lot of people because you don't understand how to deal with it. But I think being exposed and so actively involved with people who are living with Alzheimer's and dementia from a young age, it wasn't something that necessarily like scared me away.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And you mentioned like how when some of those people with dementia or Alzheimer's would hear music, they would brighten up and their mood would change. There was a documentary, I forget what it's called, but I don't know if you've seen it. It's maybe 10 plus years ago. And they highlight one person, this old man, and he's listening. And he's like very, like he barely talks. And then when they listen to music, they just brighten up. And it just blows me away, right? Like the power of music and what it can do. So I just appreciate that, you talked about that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's unbelievable what it can do. And especially when you can see that firsthand of you're playing a song in person and all of a sudden someone who's virtually non-responsive just comes to life and they're clapping and singing, and it has a massive impact on me every single time I see that. It never gets old. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I love it. I know a lot of artists growing up. I feel like a lot of artists know when they're really young that they wanted to become artists and that's all they had on their minds. You mentioned, I guess, going back as early as 2 years old, hearing Day Tripper by the Beatles. I don't know, was that like, did you know at 2 years old that you wanted to be an artist at that point?
I don't know. There's videos of me. We had an old Yamaha Clavinova piano as well that my mom got when she was a kid, and you could press some buttons and it would play music, kind of throw out the speakers on it. And there's videos of me at 1.5 or 2 years old, just like headbanging on the piano, just like pounding away on it. Obviously not playing, but just headbanging, loving the music, bouncing to the beat. And so music was always super present in our house. Tunes were always cranked. There's always music going on everywhere. And so I think that probably had a really big influence on me. And like you said, the Day Tripper thing, I vividly remember like turning up the dial on our big old tower speaker 6-disc changer CD player that everyone had in the 90s and just like listening to that guitar riff over and over again. And I probably asked at some point, like, what's that? Like, what's that sound kind of thing? And someone said it was a guitar. And then maybe about 6 months before I ended up getting my first guitar, I went to my first concert, and that was Nickelback, Three Doors Down, and Stained in Red Deer. And we got tickets the day of the show. I was 6 years old, and we got front row seats. And we show up to the arena in Red Deer, and there's no seats on the floor. It's just general admission mosh pit. So my mom's like, oh God, what did I do bringing like my 6-year-old to this mosh pit kind of thing? And so we get right up to the front. We're standing on the bar, and the bar is like right in line with my eyes. So the security guards actually like lifted me over the security fence and like let me sit on the sub at the front of the stage and watch the show.
That's incredible. But also, I mean, I don't know if you remember, was it not like ridiculously loud for you?
I probably had earplugs in. I don't remember. My mom probably would have made me wear earplugs.
All right. Well, speaking of being at a Nickelback show, is that a band is that like one of the dream collabs, or who's a Canadian artist that you'd want to collab with that you haven't yet?
Yeah, I mean, Nickelback would be unbelievable. They're one of the biggest bands in the world. They're from right here in our own province, and for 20 years they've been doing nothing but making phenomenal music. And it's like I said, it's the first show I went to. And it's been cool to see the resurgence of them over the past couple of years, because growing up, there's that, the big stigma. Everyone hates Nickelback and all this stuff. And it's been cool to see that kind of come full circle of like, oh, no, actually everyone always loved Nickelback. Maybe they didn't want to admit it. So yeah, Nickelback would be a phenomenal collaborator. Another one would be probably, Bryan Adams. To like actually collaborate with him would be unbelievable on a project. And probably Colin James, I think, would be the third one for Canadian artists.
I've said for a while, and my friend we've talked about this, how I think Nickelback is slowly going towards country. It wouldn't shock me if they go to country. But speaking of like just like what your sound and what your genre is, again, you're not what you call typical country. Again, you have this inspiration from like hair metal, 80s music, and all that. Also, when I talk to Dan Davidson, him too, he kind of pushes the boundaries of what country is. So I'm curious, like, what you're looking to achieve when it comes to making country music.
I think it's number one. I think the reason that I'm in country music is telling the story and writing songs that can convey a message or a feeling that have an impact on the people who are listening. And I think that's the coolest thing about country music that gets lost in a lot of other genres maybe, is you can strip a country tune regardless of what the production is, whether it's the most pop country tune or whether it's the most hard rock, hearty country tune, whatever you want to pick on either side of the spectrum. You can strip it back to an acoustic guitar and a vocal, and you can tell a story and move a room with a good song. And I think that at the end of the day, that's my goal with the songs that I write. And I think the cool thing about country music is it's got so diverse, and the genre has opened up so much in the last couple of years that you can kind of take the production styles any way you want. So for me, I want to kind of honor and include all of those things that were my influences growing up, from lots of Southern rock and blues stuff, as well as like little taste of the hair metal and hard rock and some crazy drum fills and stuff like that. And I think it's cool that you can do that in country music now. It's about the song, but it allows you to do whatever you want with the production.
Yeah, no, 100%. By the way, I have to say, I don't know if this is your first song or one of the first songs released, at least on Spotify, Cross the Line in 2015. That to me was a big influence of like metal or just fast pace. I really like that one. So yeah.
Thank you.
That was a good one. So I'm curious, I guess, what's the plan for the rest of the year? Because obviously, again, you have She's My Religion that just came out. I know most artists focus on singles, and I guess I understand why. But like me, I guess old school, being a millennial, I like a good album. So do we have an album coming out?
We do have a record coming out later this year, and it's a big project. So it's a lot of tunes. And it's going to be a continuation of that Good Things EP. I feel like that was the start of the story. So we're going to finish telling the story a little bit later this year. So we'll have lots of music coming throughout the year, and in the fall we'll have a big record for you.
Awesome. Have you been to Canadian Music Week here in Toronto?
I have not been to Canadian Music Week. I've really wanted to make it out there, and it has just never worked that I've been able to get out there when it's happening.
Yeah, with your schedule or whatever. Yeah. Okay. No, yeah, you got to come. Yeah, that's great. Like I was actually supposed to interview Annika because she was going to be here, but then her flight got canceled. I think, I don't know.
Like last minute, it was like she was ready to go because I was at their house the night she was supposed to leave. Spencer and I were working on some things, and she was like getting ready to go, and then her flight was just canceled, and they couldn't rebook another one without it costing like $1 million or something ridiculous to get there in time. And yeah, she was just devastated.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. But no, I hope you can make more music with her, because again, I obviously this is about you, but she's very talented. I'm a big fan of hers as well.
She's phenomenal.
So I hope to hear more from her, but of course I hope to hear more from you as well. So again, album or record, like you said, any festivals that have been announced yet that you're attending?
Nothing that's been announced yet, unfortunately. But we're going to be announcing a bunch of stuff in the next, we'll say, 6 weeks. In the next 6 weeks, a bunch of stuff will be announced, and I'll give you a save the date. Every year I do a charity event for Alzheimer's called Ride to Remember, and the date for this year's event is going to be happening June 29th in Calgary. A whole bunch more details still to come about that, but people can save the date, June 29th in Calgary on the long weekend.
When's the last time you were in Toronto?
Last time I was in Toronto was in October.
Not that long ago.
Yeah, we're planning to be back out there in April or May. As soon as the record's done, we're going to be out that way, touring around to all the different streaming platforms and having a bunch of meetings and stuff like that. So we'll be back. So we'll have to connect when I'm out there.
Definitely. Yeah, no, as you know, you got to do the circuit, you got to promote. And it's funny, I also do I help other artists with their social media. So I tell them, it's you focus on the music, let me focus on editing and doing all that stuff, because I get it. It's not fun for you if you have to focus on that. So, I respect that. Yeah.
Totally.
But no, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. And I really hope, I wish you nothing but the best. And yeah, we'll connect hopefully when you're here.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good night, man.
Yeah, cheers.